Mazal Tov to everybody. When you look around you,
that on?
It's very interesting. We're reading the book of Exodus, and it's a lot about Torah and going up a mountain. Okay, so what Ryan really is doing, when you say, my parents brought me to the middle of the desert, when I'm becoming a man, what is the connection? So there's a lot of things going on. One thing is that the word desert we say in English, okay, that's fine, but in Hebrew we say midbar. And that comes from the Hebrew word daber, which means speak. Okay? There's something that Jews got in the desert when we came here that spoke to us. And even when we say the word Jews, what does it mean to be a Jew? Where do we get the name Jew? Who's a Jew? Yehudi. It comes not from the word Judaism, which is only about 100 years old. It comes from the word that we are from this place. Ryan, believe it or not, somehow if you go from Florida to Dallas to, I don't know, Lithuania, Ukraine, Babylon, Spain, someone in your family was here in Yehuda. And so we are Jews not because of Judaism, which is our spiritual heritage, but because this is where we come from. We come from Judea. Do you have any stubborn people in your family?
Honestly, or?
Honestly.
Sean, want a hat?
You don't have to say who. You don't have to say who. You can
Yes.
Just, yes. And in the Hebrew Bible, what are the Jews known as? Am kashe orach. We are a stiff-necked people. And the fact that all of you are back here shows that we are indeed a stubborn people. That somehow 2,000 years ago, it is not logical, or does it make sense that Ryan, you and your family should be back here? But we are. And what has kept us together? Well, we were somehow kicked out, and we wandered until we got to Dallas and Florida and all over, and Baltimore. And the Torah has kept us together. Because those, if you don't have physical boundaries, that's, the boundaries of the land of Israel are the Dead Sea. You're surrounded by Jewish history, and to the north, and to the south, and to the west you have boundaries. When we were wandering, we had boundaries, and the boundaries were the laws of the Torah. A law is like a wall. It says how you can behave. And now that you are becoming a man, you now have this sense of boundaries, of Torah. So even though I know you're not going to file taxes, your parents are still going to take care of basic needs, when we're talking about Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, and how you behave, and how you decide who you are and who you want to be, it's our tradition that God does no longer hold your parents responsible. There's even a blessing for parents of the bar mitzvah that say, Baruch shepitrani, I am no longer I'm no longer responsible for this one. But what that means is ethically, the decisions that you make and the choices that you make are now, you're accountable for them. The good news is that in Jewish tradition, every year we get to assess, what did this mean? What was my life about? And then we get to do the whole thing over again and say, you know what? I did the best I could. I'm going to start new. But this process of being an adult with ethical responsibilities is now on you, Ryan. And finally, bar mitzvah. A mitzvah. What's a mitzvah? It's a commandment, right? But there are two parts to every mitzvah. One is just showing up. Okay? That's 50% of the mitzvah. And for all of you, that wasn't just, I know that didn't happen easily. There are a lot of reservations, there are a lot of logistics, there are a lot of phone calls and emails and Skype, and the tremendous effort that went into bringing all of you here is really, really important. And the second part is actually the performance of the mitzvah. So you have a lot of things going on here, and I think it's an amazing place that here you are in the desert, about to becoming a Jewish adult. And do you know the word for Egypt in Hebrew? We say Mitzrayim. Nice. Okay. The center of that word is the word sar, which means narrow. Okay. Jews are against being narrow. We believe in being broad and open and exploring. And that's one of the reasons that we get Torah in the desert. We don't get Torah in a narrow place in Egypt. We have to go into the desert, and as you know, Sinai, or as you expand this desert, is very open. And so it's about openness, it's about exploring, it's about not being narrow, and it's about figuring out what does God want from us? What do we hear speaking in this idea of midbar? Okay, so we're going to begin the service on page 1 with, actually before we begin the service, what I'm going to do is, actually we're going to begin the service and then before we chant, we're going to have you put on your talit, okay? But we begin the service on page 1 with Matzovu, which is all about, when you go into a synagogue, what do you see? You come in from the back and what do you see?
The ark.
You see talitot. Everybody's wearing a talis. What does it look like? Tents.
Tents.
Okay? Even though we might be in Florida or Dallas, when we go into a synagogue, we're reminded of the desert. We're reminded of tents. And when we wandered, we took everything from Israel with us to remind us from where we came. So together we sing, Matovu Alecha Yaakov Mishkenotecha Yisrael Matovu Alecha Yaakov Mishkenotecha Yisrael Matovu Alecha Yaakov Mishkenotecha Yisrael Vani Merov Chastecha Ahavo Ve'etecha Eshtecha Ve'erecha Kodshecha Me'iratecha Adonai Ahavti Me'on Beitecha U'mekom Mishkan Kivodecha Vani Eshtecha Ve'erecha Evracha Lifnei Adonai Osi Vani Tefilati Lecha Adonai Et Ratzon Elohim Berov Chastecha Ahaneni Bemet Yishecha. And then we turn to page 2, and before we start the formal service we're going to have Ryan put on his dress and say the bracha.
Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kishal mipsaltav v'tifanu, lahitatef v'sisid.
Okay, and this is symbolic that Ryan is now, each one of the knots on the, we're not going to count them, but each one of the knots on the talis stands for a mitzvah, and there are 613 knots, meaning 613 commandments, and this idea that Ryan is wrapped. It's not just about an intellectual piece. You put on tefillin, right? You put on tefillin this trip?
Yes.
The idea of tefillin is it's on your head, so on an intellectual level you're connecting, but it's also with your heart. And so, your mother's making some. It's also in your heart, so it's an emotional piece too. Do you ever do something, you thought about it but you didn't really feel it? Or sometimes you did something, you felt it but you didn't really think about it.
Sure.
The idea of tefillin is connecting the commandments, so it's on both levels. We continue the service on page 2, and these are the daily miracles for every day. Things we don't think about.
Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher natan l'shivcha v'nei lehavhen ben yom uvil le'elah.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, pokeach ivrim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, matir asurim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, zokef kifufim. Page 3. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, rokatz al hamayim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, המלכים מצדי גבר. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, מלביש ערומים. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, הנותן לפתוח. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, המביא שינה מעיני ותנומה מעפעפי. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, שעשני בצלם אלוהים. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, שעשני בן חורין. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, שעשני ישראל. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, עוזי ישראל בגבורה. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, and the idea of these blessings are to basically make you thankful for waking up in the morning. Most of the time when we wake up in the morning, the first thing we don't say is, we're not grateful, right? We're hitting the alarm clock. Right. And the rabbis knew this. And the rabbis wanted to stop us and say, close your eyes, everybody, except for you if you're taking the picture. Close your eyes. You don't think about eyesight. Most of us just take it for granted. But one of the prayers here is thanking God for being able to see. And that happens a lot in life when suddenly we can't do something that we always took for granted. We say, wow, what a miracle is that we work, that we can see, that we can do these things. And so I guess if Descartes says, I think, therefore I am, Judaism says, we thank, therefore we are. This whole idea of being grateful, of waking up in the morning, and that's what the service is about. It's kind of a spiritual stop sign before you go out on your day and say, and you could do it here, it's easier. Look around you, and, acknowledge how amazing it is to be alive. We rise for the Baruch Hu on page 6.
Ata Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, yotzer or uvoreh hoshech, oseh shalom uvoreh et hakol, hameir la'aretz v'la'adarim, aleha v'rahamim, u'tuvo mehadesh b'hol yom tamid, ma'aseh bereshit, ma rabu ma'aseha Adonai, kulam b'chochma asita, ma'al ha'aretz kinyaneha, tit barach Adonai Eloheinu, al sheva maaseh yadeha, ve'al me'oreh or she'asita yefaharuha sela, or hadesh al Sion ta'ir benizke kulanu mahareh le'oro baruch atah Adonai yotzer ha'me'orot.
Okay, when we say the Baruch Hu, where do you usually face in your synagogue? Which direction?
Jerusalem.
So everybody says east. Everybody's too smart. Okay, we face Jerusalem. Now we're not east. Jerusalem's not east. Where is Jerusalem for us now?
North.
North. Okay, so no matter where you are, everybody is facing Jerusalem. And together we chant. Baruch hu et Adonai hamevorach. Baruch Adonai hamevorach. Le'olam va'ed. Please be seated. If the Jewish service teaches us about being conscious and being grateful, it also takes us through the history of the world on many levels every day. And the prayer that